You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. This is Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show once again, my family and friends. The Chris Voss Show, the family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mother-in-law. Anyway, guys, we have another amazing author on the show. He's written many books, and we're going to be talking about his latest book. And so we've got some excitement there coming, and we're going to be talking about stuff that will educate your mind, expand your thinking, help you learn new things. At least I think I will. And you'll learn new things and probably become sexier. You know, maybe your significant other will be like, hey, you're smarter. I can tell there's something different about you. I'm more attracted to you than ever before. Or maybe I'm just attracted to you in the first place. Anyway, guys, before we get to that, as always, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Guilt and shame them into subscribing to the show. No, don't quite do that, but you know what I mean. YouTube.com/Chris Voss, Goodreads.com/Chris Voss, and LinkedIn, the LinkedIn newsletter. That thing's killing it over there. We put all the smart stuff over there, and the show just kicks butt. So check that out as well. He's the author of the newest book, and he joins us here today. This is his first book that's been printed in English, or converted to English, I suppose. He'll tell us more about what that means. We have Ulf Danielsson on the show with us today. We got his name perfectly right.
Absolutely. Perfect.
There we go. He had the newest book that just came out February 21st, 2023. It's called The World Itself, Consciousness, and the Everything of Physics. And we're going to be talking about his amazing journey through life and what he wrote in the book and everything else. But before we get to him, he is a prize-winning physicist with a PhD from Princeton University, whose research concentrates on dark energy and a string theory with a special focus on applications in cosmology. He's a member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences and professor of theoretical physics at Uppsala University?
Yeah, Uppsala. That's the name of it.
There we go. I need to work on my Swedish meatballs. He has delivered lectures throughout the world based on his award-winning popular science books, which have been translated into several different languages. His newest book is coming out and appears in English. Welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I'm fine.
There you go. Well, we're glad to have you as well. Give us a .com or wherever we want people to find you on those interwebs in the sky.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Give us a .com or wherever we want people to find you, get to know you better on the internet.
Oh, you mean okay. It's ulfdanielsson.com.
There you go.
Yeah, it's as easy as that.
Now you have about, I think you said 5 or 6 books out?
Yeah, it's popular science books. Most of them are, they're written in a kind of a personal tone, all of them, and treating various subjects which I sort of got interested in, but they are related to physics in one way or the other, and that's certainly true for this latest book. Absolutely.
What are physics for the layman out there? We have over here in America, we have a Gen Z that they skipped through some of school with COVID. What is physics in a general sense, and why is it important to write books?
Well, physics deals really with the fundamentals of the world. How the world is built up, what its constituents are, what are the laws, basic laws of nature, why are we here, what explains the origin of the earth, the matter, everything. And it's actually also very important for applications in technology. Everything our technology builds upon, like electricity or nuclear power or whatever, everything, you need to have some knowledge of physics in order to understand and to make all of these inventions. It's really the foundation of the knowledge about the world.
There you go. So it's like is gravity physics? Is that part of physics?
Gravity is absolutely physics. In some sense, maybe everything is physics, but there is a kind of a hierarchy. Physics is sort of at the bottom of everything. And from physics, you can derive chemistry, and from chemistry comes biology, and from biology, well, all the humanities, social science, and everything is sort of higher up in the ladder.
I think my biggest problem with gravity is my age. As I get older, everything seems to be sagging. I think we need to go back to that Newton guy and declare his gravity thing debunked, so that we can come up with some sort of new physics for gravity, because it's not working out for me right now.
That's not the fault of physics.
I know, I do. It sounded like a good joke. I think I stole it from some crazy gal on YouTube who said that. So give us an overview of the book from 30,000 feet.
Okay, so the book is a kind of, in a way, it tries to provide a worldview. So this is a book I thought quite a lot about when I wrote it. I wanted to write a book that describes what I had learned about the world in general by my lifelong study of physics. So it's a book which has a lot of philosophical implications. It deals with, not the least, things like consciousness. What does physics tell about consciousness? What about the nature of mathematics? Is everything mathematics? Is our world the only one? Does it exist other worlds? Do you have a free will? Lots of things like that is treated in the book. And I try to sort of give my answers, my attempts to answer all of those questions, and put them together in some kind of in a worldview, in a sense.
There you go. So you try to explain the world itself in the book, then?
I think that my main message in the book, and this is something which might sound a little bit trivial, but it's not. And that is, the world is real and it exists out there. We are not living in some kind of a virtual reality. We are not living inside of computers or anything like that. It's a real world of flesh and blood, which needs to be taken seriously. And mathematics is something which sits inside of our heads. It's not out there. So it's a book which I think the main message is to take reality seriously. And I think that is something which is necessary in our day and age.
Yeah, it really does, because we live in a reels over feels sort of environment, especially here in America, where we if it hurts your feelings because it's reality, we go, oh no, let's change reality, and it's not working out very well when you try and do that. I'm an atheist, and people can believe what they want to get through this little ride or journey that we're on from beginning to end, or what we're aware of is the beginning to end. And it seems like the universe does work on mathematical sequences for everything in life. I mean, is that true, or is it not true? Is it kind of true?
Actually, I think that one of my most important messages is in the book is, of course, that mathematics is an incredible valuable tool, and it's fun too. I mean, the way that I got into physics was that I loved nature and the stars and the sky and everything as a kid, and I also found that mathematics was really fun to learn and use. That's the way to understand what's going on out there. But it's also true that for me, and that's the main message of the book, that mathematics is a tool. It's not that the world is mathematical in itself. I sincerely believe that mathematics is inside of our heads. It's a tool that we use in order to describe the world. And our models, our laws of nature that we construct, they are really our inventions. And we use them in order to make predictions and describe the world. But it's not that the universe is governed by our laws of physics. It's just that our laws of physics mimic what the universe does for whatever reason. So that's sort of my worldview, my point of view, that we are here in a big mysterious universe, and we try as best as we can to describe it, and mathematics is an important tool.
So by what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, would a theory be that basically the universe and everything doesn't really operate by mathematics? That's just the way that we're consciously choosing a way to evaluate it, measure it, and predict it. Is that
absolutely? I think that's a very important point. And I don't think that the universe, nature, needs to do any calculations. It just does what it does, and we try to mimic it using mathematics. We set up all of these laws, which always are imperfect. They're provisionary. With time, we improve them, we learn more. But that's basically what we do, and we cannot. I mean, the universe. I mean, it does what it does, and we try to understand it as best as we can with our limited. And that is something that we need to remember with our limited abilities. After all, we are these organic beings which have evolved on this planet. I mean, we have grown up literally out of dirt, and we have these brains with a little bit more than 1.5 kilograms roughly. And clearly, we cannot understand all what's going on in the universe. We have a limited capacity to understand and to grasp reality, but we do our best.
Yeah, we try to, we do a lot of different understandings. I mean, anytime you see what's going on, we try to see the seemingly infiniteness of space and time and different things like that. Are we different as a species, as a human species, where we, I don't see like snakes and monkeys and rhinos sitting around plotting the future based on the past and being consciously aware of what's going on. But I could be wrong. Maybe they are. They're just good at hiding it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Actually, I think it's actually a matter of degree to some extent. I mean, clearly, also, I think that other animals, maybe most animals, are conscious in some sense.
Really?
They have an eye, they have a subjective feeling of existing in the world. And also one of the most important aspects of life, all living organisms, is that they need to survive. They need some capacity to predict what's going on, to predict what will happen. They have to act on the impressions that they get from the environment. So they need to somehow predict what will happen. In some sense, set up laws, some rules of thumb, something which can lead them to make the correct decision. So that's a property of all living organisms. And then it's just that we, with our brains, have evolved that a little bit further. So we have a greater capacity to do this. And we call it science at some point. But I think it's more a graduate. It's a different in degree, in a sense, rather than something which is really qualitatively different.
Yeah. I mean, me and my bank have discussions. I think there's $1 million in there based on the checks I write. And they say there's $5 in there. And so we're constantly having that battle over mathematics. So I don't know, maybe the universe works on mathematics, or maybe it just works on how I feel. I mean, as long as I have checks. It's an old check joke. So, and considering, one of my girlfriends who just pounds Amazon all day long and fills up the front door with boxes at her house, I don't think maybe she needs to be introduced to mathematics as well, or maybe it's just a matter of time. Did we really have to learn all that algebra in high school? Was that really necessary, being forced upon us?
Well, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, it's clear that in some sense, I'm sure that we unconsciously, or even not in our brains, but also our bodies as a whole, is doing quite a lot of advanced, well, not mathematics perhaps, but in practice. Let's just think of a soccer player who shoots the ball and it hits the target or something. It's an enormously complicated thing to actually do if you sit down with pen and paper and try to calculate the path of the ball and all of that. But that's something that you still can do with your body and your brain. You can do these things quite accurately if you have practiced a lot. So it's clear that you can do quite advanced stuff even without knowing all of this mathematics. But if you want to know about how things work in areas where you don't really have any experience of what happens inside of the atom, or for that matter inside of a computer, if you want to construct a car or whatever, things which you don't have a real experience of what's going on, and incredibly accuracy is needed, then you need math. Then math is what makes technology work. You really need mathematics to do all of that. And then, of course, if you're curious about what's happening in the other parts of the universe, I mean, then mathematics is the language that you need to be able to speak if you want to understand what's going on. Absolutely.
Do you feel like people need the importance of your book is getting people to understand, how this is redundant, how important physics and the mathematics in life are. I mean, I see people, they go through the universe and there's a lot of miracle claimers, as they like to call it, where people go, oh, this happened because, a boogeyman under my bed or up in the sky decided it should happen, or, some of it makes me really mental. You'll see like a storm that will kill 100 people and one person lives, and they claim it's a miracle and that someone ordained them as the sole survivor. And you're just like, yeah, but like 90 other people suffered a horrific death. I mean, that doesn't seem like, if that's a perfect world in your mind of some sort of selection of a ultimate being, that seems a little bit off in its caring and empathy. And so, people will do stuff, like a car crash. They'll blame, something, a lightning storm, or, whatever sort of thing happens in the universe that ends up being catastrophic. It gets, tamed to some sort of boogeyman entity, instead of like, well, this is the randomness of the universe sometimes. And maybe the universe isn't random. Maybe there is a mathematics to a certain degree.
Well, I mean, the book I think it speaks to different people in different way. I mean, sure, this is a book about physics, and it tells us about how physics is behind everything that happens in the world, even though, and I think this is a real important message as well, and that is that we don't know about all of that physics. There are so many things that we do not know about. So it's also a kind of appeal to being a little bit humble, because there are also many people who really have kind of a overconfident view of what we can do and what our capacities are, and do not realize that we are these limited organic beings, which are also very fragile in a world which is also quite hostile, to be frank. I mean, the universe is not a very nice place to be in. I mean, the Earth is a local exception, but otherwise it's a pretty harsh place. So it's also trying to put ourselves in a perspective from that point of view. And just as you indicated in the beginning, I'm not a big fan of dualism in the sense that there is some supernatural force that is governing the world. In fact, this book is an attempt to suggest a worldview which is materialistic, where physics is everything, but still has the room for mystery and even for our conscious minds and our subject inner feeling of existence, which I think is still a big, big mystery. I do not think it has been explained. It's a natural phenomena, but the natural phenomena based on things which we do know very little about.
So let me ask you a question to that then. Since our rudimentary understanding of the universe, we use mathematics in our language and terminology to try and understand it. But there are things in this universe that we don't understand, like why we're here. Maybe there is no reason why we're here. Maybe that's the point. It could be that's the feature, not the bug. It could be. But is that because maybe we haven't formulated something as dynamic beyond mathematics or whatever, to where we just can't define it? Or maybe it isn't on its basis or face undefinable because it is the universe.
Yeah, I mean, it could be due to many things. It could be just due to the fact that we haven't been here sufficiently long. I mean, after all, science is evolving, and if we can sort of be nice to each other and keep developing society and even science, I'm sure that we'll learn a lot more over the next decades, hundreds of years or thousands of years, or whatever time scale. So a lot more to know, a lot more questions to answer, and a lot more questions to discover as well. But then I'm sure there could also be lots of questions which we are too stupid to even be able to formulate. There are deep truths about the universe which we are not able to understand, while one could imagine maybe other beings on other planets with other kinds of bodies and brains that have a science which is much more developed than ours and can easily understand things which we have no idea about. So Again, I mean, you were comparing us with other animals and suggesting that we are sort of qualitatively better in some way. And sure, we are. I mean, we have. I mean, certainly, you and I, we have a much more developed worldview than a dog or a cat or something like that. As far as what are the stars and how does what is matter and so on and so forth. But similarly, there could exist beings on other planets which understand things, not only because the science has developed further, it's simply because they have minds which are greater than ours.
Yeah. And here, over here in America, we're kind of known for using as less of our brains as we possibly can. What is it, like 5% or less of our brains we actually use or something? I don't know. And for some people, it's far less than that. I think George Carlin had that famous statement that 50% of people are dumber than the average. So there goes society. And, you can see what's going on in our world. Some of that explains it. So it's good that you put in this framework, and you've raised some different things that I'm going to be thinking about that'll be haunting me in my nightmares and dreams about how we don't really still fully understand the universe. But physics appears and mathematics appear to be the best way to try and measure it and understand it for what our limited knowledge is. Is there Elon Musk and people have talked about how we could be living in a simulation, and I think you talk about that a little bit in the book, don't you?
I do, and I find that this is one of the really ridiculous ideas which I try to argue against in my book. I find it so sad that
really
one can start to think in those terms. I find it just as ridiculous as it sounds. It's sort of these kind of ideas which you can try to boast with and try to impress people at the party that you're so intelligent that you can come up with ideas like that. For me, they're just very, very silly. And I think they are the reason why you come up with things like that is simply because we are so used to it's the society we are living in. We are so used to the ideas of virtual realities and so on. We are living on the internet or whatever, that we are losing touch with reality, and then we start to imagine things like that. So for me, this is just a very, very silly idea, which I don't believe in at all. And in fact, this is partly what I'm arguing against in the book.
Now, does both your books in each simulation say the same thing about that, or does the other simulation?
I hope so. I
had to cover that. Yeah, there's lots of people that do that on like TikTok and social media. There's an entertainment factor to it where you go, but it's always interesting to me to ponder stuff. But yeah, once you start suspending reality to to placate your insecurities and your delusions and coming up with all sorts of things. I do think it's interesting how as a people or as and some religions are many religions are bad at doing this, but they describe that we're a dominant top being of enlightenment in the universe, and therefore we probably created it. And I think when you really study the biology of man and how we're built, we're really not the perfect entity of biology. We're really awful, actually, when you look at how.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at us. How could we be sort of the top of the best in the universe? I mean, it's a ridiculous thought.
Yeah. I mean, clearly snakes know they are because they're kind of assholes, but I think that's more narcissism on snakes. I don't know why I have issues with snakes this morning, but it seemed like a good any we could pick on during the show. But no, there's kind of it's interesting. I told my niece and nephew this when they graduated high school. I said, look, there's 3 things that you need to be aware of in life, and one's really important. One is what you know. Okay, and everybody knows what you know, or at least hopefully you do. 2 is what you know you don't know. And that's important to also find out and learn. But the third biggest one is what you don't know you don't know.
Isn't that Donald Rumsfeld that said something like that?
It might have in one of his 50,000 emails that were insecure. Yeah, it might have. I'm not sure I ascribe anything of intelligence to that man, but the author of Iraq War. No, it probably was. You probably have that quote correct. But learning these things, reading books like yours, discovering and delving through the material, and trying to get a real grasp of how this world works. And I think a lot of people are overcome by the harshness of this world, and they're trying to explain it. Why does a man die? Why do people in a country die of famine? Why do tragedies happen and things like that? And they try to ascribe some sort of human mathematics or human elements to it. And like we've talked about before in the broadcast, it's important that people realize that, things happen. Why are we here? Because we're here. If I can quote the band Rush and Neil Peart. Why are we here? Because we're here. Roll the bones. We spend so much time sometimes pondering our own navels that maybe we should just get on with the survival game that we're in.
And try to take care of each other instead of finding excuses of various kinds for why things go wrong. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the tribal nature of how we divvy that up, where we try to say, well, this camp decides that mathematics and physics aren't important and there's no rule to a universe, and that somehow there's some benevolent or sometimes really angry narcissistic sadist that wants to torture people on this planet, and somehow that's some sort of going to get you to a higher place in some sort of tier of afterlife or something, or real estate.
It's also that this kind of perspective that I try to argue for in my book. I mean, it connects, of course, to another very, 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 very important theme, which has to do with the climate change and what we are doing to the earth and so on, and the need of having a different kind of view of the world, which in some sense needs to be a little bit more collective when it comes to other human beings on this planet, but also to feel a kind of a belonging to the natural world, including definitely the living world, the planet as a living thing, where we play a role and are a part. And I think that this is something that we desperately need, because now we have also, through this living in these virtual realities, we are not only separating ourselves from reality, we are separating ourselves from the natural world and think that we are living outside of it. We are independent of nature in some sense. We have all this technology which protect us, but still, as is obvious, we are completely dependent upon our survival, that the natural world works and that we work with it. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that we need in the way that we view the world, a change in the way that we appreciate nature. And this is easy to say and very difficult to do anything about, but it's a profoundly different frame of mind that is needed, where we really at every moment are aware of who we are and what role we play in the cosmos and the place of the earth.
There you go. And I think there's an insecurity or a panic reaction to it, where when a tragedy happens, people die, a tree falls over and kills somebody, lightning strikes, there's earthquakes, floods. People want to ascribe something to it that seems to have some sort of benevolence, where maybe it's a half angry God who cares, but I don't know, he had a bad morning that morning, or that there's a fear or a panic that the universe is random, or that there's some sort of mathematical quality to it, but still there's, like you say, the unknown and the randomness, and one is kind of more of a security blanket to ascribe to that, and one is a theory and reality that deals with, hey man, the world, it's a survival game, in my opinion, where the universe seems to be a big survival game. Whatever your species is, you might be going extinct this week, and who knows?
Well, it's a tough place, and that's where we have our capacities here, which have evolved our brain. That's our way to survive, and we are not very strong, but we are pretty smart compared to other animals, and that's it's both a blessing and a curse in our case, because we are we're also using it to destroy our environment. Now, this is not, I mean, ironically, this is not the first time in the history of the world where life has more or less destroyed itself. I mean, it has happened several times. If you go back a few billions of years, when the Earth was 2 billion years old, there were some bacteria, microscopic organisms that discovered photosynthesis. And realized that they could use the sunlight to get energy, and they converted carbon dioxide into oxygen and destroyed, actually, this went in the other direction. They destroyed the greenhouse effect, which was due to methane at the time, through the production of the oxygen, which meant that the temperature dropped and Earth was thrown into an ice age that went on for hundreds of millions of years, and the Earth was a big snowball. And it could have been the end of life on Earth due to life sort of overreaching itself. So we are not the first life form that is threatening our own existence and other life on the planet. It has happened before. So so things like this happen in a sense. I mean, it's so random. And the fact that we are here depends on so many accidents during the history of the Earth. I mean, including the extinction of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. If that hadn't happened, if that asteroid hadn't collided with the Earth, there wouldn't probably be any big mammals around. Maybe the dinosaur had developed some intelligence or something like that. Who knows? The world would have been completely different.
Yeah. I mean, for all we know, they were walking around with, reading books and stuff, those dinosaurs, and writing stuff.
Maybe they would have been writing even better books than we are.
They had those little eyepieces that make you seem smart in England, and maybe they're like Sherlock Holmes, and they talked really good language. So for all we know,
so it's clear that there is not really direction in that sense in history. There are lots of randomness. But this is something that you have to accept, that there's no one that will going to take care of you or protect you, not as a species, not as a civilization. It's up to us. There is no guarantee that we will survive. I mean, if you look at what happens with the climate, the wars, whatever, there is no guarantee that we will survive. And that's something that one needs to really realize, that it's not someone else that will do it for us. We have to do it ourselves.
And I think that's the other fear that people get into, where they're afraid of the future and the fear of, what if a big, a meteor comes and destroys us, next week, then, there's the fear of, does this matter? Does my life matter and everything else? I have that question posed to me constantly as an atheist, where people say to me, how do you have morals if the world seems dystopian, because you're going to live and die, and that's going to be the end of you, and what you did here didn't mean much. And I'm like, it does mean much what you do here between the front and the beginning. But it's interesting how people, I don't know, they measure and deal with it, and they look for something to placate their fears and their scaredness of what's under the bed, or what they think is under the bed, the boogeyman, and whatever. But I think Jurassic Park proved that the dinosaurs really didn't develop a good language. I think that movie fleshed out the reality of it. Anyway, that's not true. That's just.
I mean, for me, I sort of probably have a worldview which is very similar to yours, and I hope that one can live a moral and ethic life without just referring to some external force that will punish you if you don't live like that. I mean, I would think that you could do it on your own somehow. But it's also, for me, there is something else. I mean, when I look at the stars, when I look at the sky above me and at the dark night, I mean, I know that some people, they feel afraid when they see this. They get worried. I mean, the universe is so big and I am so small, and it's so dangerous, and I'm so meaningless. Everything is pointless. I don't feel like that at all. When I look at the stars, and I feel a sense of belonging, in the sense that, okay, this is the universe, which I'm not just observing it. I'm a part of it. this is me in some sense. I'm built out of the same kind of matter, and which means that if maybe I could even argue that I, as a living being, organic living being, is rather unique. I'm even more important than all of these stars up there in the sky. So in this universe, we here on Earth and other living beings on other planets, that might be the whole point with the universe. So one can turn it around in that sense, and rather feel a belonging to a universe which is so fantastic and beautiful and intricate that it can produce something as great as us here on Earth.
There you go. So do you see that a lot of problem, you talk about this in the book, do you see a lot of problem is our dualistic views, where we have some of the things I've talked about, and we need to identify and get away from those?
I think so, absolutely. And one argument in my book, in order to make it a little bit easier to throw out dualism, is to make sure that even without dualism, you can still have the room for consciousness. You can still have the room for for meaning. It's just the universe is what it is. Consciousness, everything is natural phenomena. And it's just that we don't fully understand what's going on in our brains. We don't understand that part of ourselves. That doesn't mean that it has to be something which is outside of this world. It's a property of this world, a wonderful world that can produce all of that which we cherish and love, including our consciousness and our ability to do culture and whatever, poetry, literature, and all of that, all of the humanity. It's also part of this material world. And I think that's what I'm trying to argue for, that you don't need to think about a dead materialistic world, and then in order to make it meaningful, you have to have something else, these souls or God or whatever, which is flying around and then interfere in the material world. I don't think that you need that.
Yeah, it's interesting how we base some of these, what's the right word, mythological sort of dualistic nature towards reality and physics, and we usually do them in our own image, and usually subject to the own limitations of our minds and what we believe, and we ascribe different things kind of from a parental aspect of like, well, there's a big puppet master in the sky who sometimes, if he has a bad day, is a sadist and kills, floods the world and kills millions of people. Or, sometimes he's the benevolent one who, loves us this week in some sort of narcissistic manner if we jump through certain hoops. And it's interesting how we put those in those contexts when really there may not be a male or female or even a central being overseeing the universe. It could just be that it just exists and always has, or, whatever you want to sort of believe. But, it's here and now. So you might as well run with it. It's interesting. It's interesting how big life is, and like I'll go sit in on the beach and watch the beauty of the ocean and the magnificence of the universe when I look up at the stars, and you hear the waves lapping, and you realize they've been lapping that way for eons of time, and I'm just some little speck of dust or sand on the beach that the water will just keep pouring over. And continue, unless we decide to nuke it, but I'm sure there'll be some sort of survival Earth that will come out of it. Maybe,
I think so too.
Yeah, it'll eventually. There's an old joke Carlin used to do that maybe the Earth and Mother Nature created us so she could have plastic and maybe a few other chemicals that we created, but now she really wants to get rid of us. And it seems like COVID was a real test of our survival mechanism as a species.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Maybe there's some.
I don't think so. It's probably most of the disasters that we are, and some of them we are causing ourselves, and other ones they simply come without any connection to us. So that's something that we have to cope with all of this if we want to survive. Then of course the question is, how long will we survive? There will be some limit to that. I mean, that's something which makes it. That's really a kind of thought which which is even a bit difficult for me to grasp. I mean, on the one hand, you can sort of imagine the end of your own life.
Mm-hmm.
And so on. But what's more difficult to think about is the fact that our civilization, our species, and even the Earth have a finite extent. At some point, we'll reach the moment where the last human being will die. That moment will come. And eventually all what we have done will be forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, then the aliens will probably come up and play archaeologists with us and be like, "Hey, everyone was smiling in all their pictures. They must have been a happy society on Instagram."
Yeah.
What do you think about VR and AR? My last question about VR and AR should we really be embracing it as much as we are? Because it sounds like we're going to go down a road. We're just going to be creating more of a fiction instead of dealing with reality.
No, I think that hopefully, I hope that somehow that reality will get sort of hot and modern again, and people get tired of all the virtual realities, and that's my hope. Somehow.
It almost seems like an escapism where once again we're going down a rabbit hole. I'm not saying there's anything bad with AR and VR or escapism. There's sometimes as a species we kind of need to escape from reality and suspend it for a little bit. But
maybe it's the other way around. That is exactly what causes our problems. That we are escaping it a little bit too much. We might need to face reality a little bit more often, and maybe that's a way also to get a little bit more of meaning back into life.
And operate in reality as opposed to some sort of fantastical thing.
There are so many things that we need to fix in the real world that I think we should probably focus a little bit more on that.
There you go. Well, we definitely do, because escaping reality, and we seem to live in a society now that is really hell-bent on feelings over reals, or what I call, I think someone else's term is feels over reals, where people want to fight reality because it makes them feel bad. They don't like the results of it. Like I drank way too much Mountain Dew and ate a lot of fatty foods when I was young, and I'm fat now. And I could have feelings where I could be like, yeah, it's not fair. Oh, it's bullshit that people judge me because I'm fat. No, you just lose some weight, get healthy there, buddy. It's bad for you to be fat. So, there's your reality. But, it seems like reality is the thing people are fighting nowadays. So I think your books like yours are important to get us back to that core thing. Anything more you want to tease out in the book before we go?
No, I mean, it's it's a book which deals with many things that I think many people are interested in natural, the sciences and the technology think about now. So it's also lots about computers and whether computers can get conscious and stuff like that, and including virtual realities. And it's a bit about quantum mechanics and what it tells us about the world. So there are many things which have the philosophical implications, which I try to connect together in some coherent sort of worldview. Basically, I try to read out the philosophical implications of many questions which are on our minds if you're interested in sciences.
There you go. Well, this is all important. It expand your mind, learn new stuff, learn your new things. It sounds like you wrote the book in a way that isn't a math manual or a physics manual, but it explains
I
the
try
world.
It's a book which partly is a very personal journey as well. So it's not the subject is difficult, but it's not a difficult book.
There you go. Order it up, folks, wherever fine books are sold. The World Itself, Consciousness, and the Everything of Physics. Thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, man.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
There you go. And give us a .coms where we want people to see you on the interwebs, please.
So that's ulfdanielsson.com with 2 S.
There you go. And thanks to my audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, and the big LinkedIn.com /Chris Voss. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out, my